Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. We're broadcasting live, as always, from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. So glad that you joined us this morning. We've already received 2 waves, and I appreciate that. At any point, if you'd like to weigh in and comment on the topics of the day, you see the number on the bottom of the screen. Just text or leave a voicemail. We did receive a voicemail. I wasn't going to start with this one, but it's worth mentioning. We're going to get into it a little bit further later on. But first, the message from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. Just wondering how others feel about RFK Jr.'s pick for running mate. Now, if you have not heard, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced Nicole Shanahan as his VP pick. We talked about Shanahan in the past. It's been speculation that that would be the pick. She has big ties to the tech industry, a lot of money there. She is 38 years old, has deep ties to the tech industry, and was previously married to Google co-founder Sergey Brin. Her status as running mate is meant to boost Kennedy's profile and bring in more cash to his campaign as he aims to pull closer in the polls. So we'll talk about that if we have an opportunity. Look at these waves coming in. If we have an opportunity. But I like the question, and I would reach out to anybody, or I would say, reach out to me, to anybody watching. What is your thoughts on the RFK Jr. pick? What's interesting about this, and again, I want to talk about this hopefully more in the future of the program, but there is definitely a fear within Democrat circles that Kennedy could really hurt Biden. Now, we talked about it a lot. That was my speculation. I said they're too angry at a Kennedy. I know they keep telling us he's going to steal votes from Trump, but I think that was deflection, maybe a little bit of wishful thinking. Now they're starting to get very, very concerned. And the long knives are out, and you're seeing articles about those rumblings behind the scenes. So it's kind of interesting. But what do you think about RFK's pick? I have been cautiously optimistic, neutral, where he is concerned. But this is from a viewer, if you're just joining us. But I saw a brief clip of her and wondered how others feel when shaming and immigration has to come into play and everything, not to mention bad fathers. Are there bad fathers? Yes, absolutely. There are bad mothers too. Yes, absolutely. But it's not a fair argument. And I can attest that were good fathers. Mothers, I'm assuming they mean too. I've been very turned off the past few years because every show that I found somewhat entertaining in the past, I now turn off because of all the hard luck stories. Not minimizing it, because I've had my share as well. But sick of the dangerous groupthink, daily brainwashing. Just what is the angle? Because I must be missing something. Thank you. Thank you. There's a lot to dissect there. So I only saw, in full disclosure, a little bit of her speech. I know that the media is instantly going after vaccines and their thoughts on vaccines. So I would open it to someone who maybe watched the full video. I would open the question just like the viewer did. What do you think about RFK Jr.'s pick? Do you think... I still don't think there's going to be a presidential debate. I think with the ouster, yes, she was ousted, Ronna McDaniel from NBC News, I think that shows you the direction they'll go with Trump. When it's, hey, let's have a town hall, let's show some of his rallies, let's do a debate, it'll be, we cannot give him the platform. I think we'll see that. So I don't think there'll be a debate, but they said that if his numbers stick right around where they are now, he would be, by the rules, invited to that presidential debate. It's kind of interesting. Not what I meant to start on, but I appreciate it, and that's why I like comments from viewers so much. And since I have to take a break right here off the jump, I did want to mention that a lot of times it seems like we're rushing, and sometimes I miss some comments from you, the viewers, but that's not going to happen anymore. Starting Monday, if you did not hear by now, starting Monday, we will be going 2 hours long on Frankly Speaking. Yes, at 6 a.m. I know people are saying, why didn't you go to the back end so you can sleep in a little bit? No, I think it's the best time as you get ready for work or ready for school. So 6 to 8 a.m., Frankly Speaking will air weekdays starting on Monday. So when we come back, just a lot of updates on the program this morning. One update, I want to talk about the tragedy of that fallen officer in New York City. We'll talk about that quickly and what that does for people's perception on public safety. We've got a couple of New York issues. We'll rush kind of through those, and then a lot about the presidential race. Of course, the bridge collapse. I know a lot of people are highlighting the fact that Biden said that he took the train over that bridge a lot when there was no train system on that bridge. We may talk about that as well. Anyway, we got to take a break. Before I run too long, stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking, and we're just getting started. Thank you again for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on Big Fox as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. A comment from a viewer as we were talking about RFK Jr. The only way that Kennedy can have a negative impact on Trump is if he debates him. Interesting point. This is the first piece I wanted to bring up. We're just running a little bit late. Rest in peace, Officer Jonathan Diller. And wake up, New York progressives. And this is from the New York Post editorial board. And they say an NYPD officer is dead because progressives have thrown law enforcement to the wolves and given the city over to crime. And this, there's a couple of New York City centric pieces on this, but it's really painting a larger picture of what we're dealing with public safety in New York in general. To mince words would be a dishonor to police officer Jonathan Diller, a devoted father and husband who served the city for 3 years before getting gunned down by a career criminal amid a routine traffic stop. The suspect, Guy Riviera, and the driver, Lindy Jones, refused to get out of a double-parked car. Instead, Riviera allegedly shot Diller in the stomach. The two were well known to police in the gang-ridden Queens neighborhood, with 34 prior busts between them, 21 for Riviera and 14 for Jones, whose rap sheet includes arrests for assault and attempted murder. Jones was out on bail for gun charges that were brought last April. Two more beneficiaries of New York's revolving door justice system. Who beyond the perps is culpable in the young officer's death? New York's lawmakers, state and city, who've built an environment of crime and disorder while treating police with disdain. Do they feel any shame? Day in and day out, men and women in blue go into the line of fire to protect their fellow New Yorkers. In return, anti-cop activists spit in their faces, and progressive polls demonize them. Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie, State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, and her number 2 State Senator Mike Gianaris pushed through a series of reforms that keep hardened criminals on the street, putting cops at greater risk, and have refused to make fundamental fixes to those laws, even as crime has soared. The result has been a surge in attacks on police and officers resigning at record rates. Demoralized by the service in a city where so many leaders side with the criminals. And that is another piece here by Michael Goodwin to piggyback off that, saying, two horrors are another deadly blow to New York City, a city that already didn't feel safe to anyone. Because you had the murder of a young police officer, and then you had the death of a commuter who was shoved in front of a subway train by a stranger. And what Michael Goodwin says is, when it comes to public safety, the only measurement that matters is whether people feel safe. And New Yorkers don't. According to a survey that found that vast majority of residents see the city as more dangerous than it was 6 years ago. Now, this is, I thought, a very good point. The situation is all the more dire because the murder of police officer Jonathan Diller and the death of the commuter are the direct result of bad policies that defy common sense. And I know we talk about this a lot on the program, but I think it's worth mentioning. Some of the prosecutors who should be working with police to keep the streets and subways safe would rather hound Donald Trump. And I thought that was a very, very good point. And another part of this, I don't know if you want to call it PR, but they can try to spin the statistics, but again, it is, like Michael Goodwin said, it's about what you feel. And whether it's a city or whether it's in upstate, that feeling of safety is diminishing. And then you see, James and others going after the former president. I thought that was a very good piece. Speaking of New York City, before we take our next break, the mayor has again defended the migrant debit card program as cost efficient and fraud resistant. We could take a look at it after 6 weeks and see what's working and what's not, Deputy Mayor Ann Williamson said at a wide-ranging news conference. Listen to this, and who's this by? This is Politico. Listen to this sentence real quick. The prepaid cards are intended to be used for groceries, diapers, baby formula, and other necessities at local businesses. They've invited The condemnation by right-wing news media is simply another benefit for people who entered the country illegally and for the hefty contract involved in the rollout. Yes, there's a contract involved with that, which I don't even know if we talked about that much. A lot of people making good money off of this. But it's interesting that it's right-wing media. No, there's been a lot of, we had a couple examples yesterday of people just saying, a lot of New Yorkers are struggling. Why is this incentive to bring more people when you have the mayor saying that's not what he wants? Why is it a right-wing spin on this? There's no free money. They're not ATM cards. You can't take cash out, Deputy Mayor Fabian Levy. There is no free money. What free products then? I don't know how that works. There is no free money. You get a debit card. Okay, you can't take a cash advance, but you get a debit card with what on it then? To buy of course, groceries, diapers, baby formula, and other necessities at local businesses. By the way, I think we mentioned this yesterday. The mayor himself, Mayor Adams, was set to visit the border on Saturday, and then he abruptly canceled the trip. And the reason is, quote, "We wanted to make the right decision. I'm not going to put my team in harm's way." Okay. When we come back, one other thing on immigration, then we'll dive back into a little bit about RFK, some Israel issues, some Joe Biden. Anyway, we got to take a break, though. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Our beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hasselson studio here on Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. Congressman Nick Langworthy, to tie in with Mayor Adams canceling his trip to the border. Langworthy leads Northern Border Security Caucus letter slamming Mayorkas for record illegal crossing. So this is interesting. This is on the northern side of things, something that sometimes gets overlooked. Today, Congressman Nick Langworthy, which was actually yesterday, led the 22 House Republicans on a letter to Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, urging him to address the record illegal border crossings along our northern border. This letter was co-led by Northern Border Security Caucus chairs Mike Kelly and Ryan Zink, as well as House Republican Conference Chair Elise Stefanik. Interesting. Elise Stefanik there, of course, name being thrown around for a potential VP nod. And here's what the congressman had to say. While the southwest border has been overrun with drug smugglers, we cannot allow another avenue for deadly illegal drugs into our country and our communities. In fiscal year 2024 alone, Border Patrol agents are on track to apprehend a record number of illegal immigrants at the northern border. These statistics are yet another example of how the Biden administration is downplaying the serious nature of this orchestrated border crisis. Every state has now become a border state under your leadership, or lack thereof. And here's the numbers just to show you quickly. And I'll keep them up on the screen, but according to the Customs and Border Protection data in fiscal year 2023, Border Patrol agents apprehended 10,021 aliens illegally crossing the border between ports of entry, including 2,229 apprehensions in the first 4 months alone. In 2024, through January of 2024, the Border Patrol has already apprehended 4,772 subjects along the northern border, an increase of 114%. From the first 4 months of last year. I thought those were interesting numbers. I didn't want to just read them. I want to put them up on the screen for you as well. So thank you to Congressman Nick Langworthy for passing that information along. Okay, tying in with New York, there is a new super PAC or a new PAC that is being launched to boost pro-Israel Democrats. We know there's been a lot of pushback with the decision to leave really Israel in the lurch there with the UN, not doing, just leaving them high and dry. There's been a lot of pushback on Democrats in general on their stance on Israel. So this is to try to maybe spin that perception or that image. I don't think it's a perception. I think it's there. I mean, they've been pretty forefront about it. As a matter of fact, did you see what Jamal Bowman, Representative Bowman, he's the one that pulled the fire alarm during that heated discussion in Congress. He said in a statement, and he since walked it back, but he said, quote, the UN confirmed, let me take a step back. I want to get the exact quote right. Quote, there was propaganda used in the beginning of the siege, meaning around October 7th. There's no evidence of beheaded babies or raped women. but they still keep using that lie for propaganda. So when he was asked about this, he kept deferring, saying, I have votes to worry about, and we know how important votes are to him as he pulled that fire alarm. He has since walked it back. But yes, this is just becoming common trend, and I think there could be definitely some pushback. I know that the Biden administration is hoping that they're caving and not standing with Israel will help with that base to support him, as the polls show that there is that strain of maybe anti-Israel in the Democrat Party that is not happy when Biden is strong on Israel. So they have tried to, cower to those demands, and that's what we're seeing. That was just a side note, a couple of quick things there because I have to take another break. But when we come back, Biden and the Baltimore Bridge, we'll talk about that as well as a few things here in general. And then I don't know how much we'll get to talk about Ronna McDaniel, but she is out at NBC. Not a surprise. NBC had the audacity to hire a Republican with a lot of Republican connections. That did not sit well with the Joe Scarboroughs of the world or the Chuck Todds. Again, not a problem that Joe Scarborough's there. Not a problem that George Stephanopoulos and all these people, these major people in the media that are former Democrat operatives. Not an issue. But to hire the former RNC chair led to mutiny almost. Yelling at their bosses, which is something interesting, how frequently that happens in the media now, isn't it? I guess some of these people think they're untouchable, and perhaps they are, but the Rachel Maddows of the world, Scarborough, Chuck Todd, having no problem going after their bosses. Very interesting. So we'll hopefully get a chance to talk about that as well. Let's take another short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. You're watching Frankly Speaking here. I'm Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. A comment from a viewer. Someone needs to show Biden a photo of the bridge. Ask him to show where the railroad tracks are on. Yes, if you've not heard, the president, during his speech regarding the Francis Scott Key Bridge, said about 1:30 a.m. a container ship struck the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which I've been over many, many times, commuting from the state of Delaware, either on a train or by car. I've been to Baltimore Harbor many times, and the bridge collapsed, sending several people and vehicles in the water into the river. Now, as many people pointed out, there is no train tracks or rail lines on that bridge. I gotta say, that doesn't even bother me as much as the always having to inject yourself into a story. Right? In this scenario where it's, I used to go on that bridge. Okay, there's a lot going on here though right now. What about the search and rescue? What about how many people were on the bridge? Those type of things. How about not always going back to the well and talking about your 36 years in the Senate and all that time commuting back and forth to Delaware, which is a common theme. There's been some red flags on some of those stories in the past too. But put all that aside, I just find it very weird. Well, like this one Twitter user put, where did I see it? There is no value to him inserting himself into the situation, but it's common theme. It came up later, which we'll get to in a second. Now, the White House responded by saying the president was clearly describing driving over the bridge while commuting between Delaware and D.C. during his 36-year Senate career. I know, making it all about you at a moment of a tragedy. I know he's made political hay out of that his whole career, and it's worked for him. I just find it, I guess, off-putting, for lack of a better word. Now, the president did say that the government will pay the entire cost of rebuilding the Baltimore Bridge. It is my intention that we will pay for the entire cost of reconstructing the bridge. I expect the Congress to support my effort. It's going to take some time, and the people of Baltimore can count on us, though, to stick with that every step of the way until the port is reopened and the bridge is rebuilt. We're not leaving until this job is done. Now, asked if the company behind the ship maybe should be responsible and help pay for some of that and some of the repairs, he said, we're going to pay to get the bridge rebuilt and open. Boy, it is getting kind of out of hand where it's just constant. We're going to pay. It's like, a blank check on everything. I'm not saying we don't help. Of course we do. But maybe talk to the shipping company, see if they've got some insurance. Maybe not just try to pony it all up right at the beginning. The president also, I don't know, do I want to talk about all this? We have so many questions or so many comments coming in. But I see that Biden's got a new joke, and it is kind of ironic when this joke came out. So President Biden yesterday joked about Donald Trump. This is his joke, and you'll probably hear it a lot. The other day, a defeated guy came up to me and said, "Mr. President, I'm being crushed by debt. Completely wiped out." I had to look at him and say, "Sorry, Donald, I can't help you." Now that's his line. That's his big line. He's used it in the past as well. But it's ironic that he did that yesterday, and it was a way to take a dig at that $454 million bond. Excuse me. You know, sometimes it all blends together. $500 million bond, but that did get lowered. But it was a dig at the weaponization of the justice system against Trump. It was just to add, I guess, insult to injury. But the fact that he picked yesterday when Trump's net worth skyrocketed to $6.4 billion after a successful merger between his Trump Media and Entertainment Group and Digital World Acquisition Corporation. For the first time, Trump will be listed on the Bloomberg Billionaires Index of the world's wealthiest 500 people, according to the outlet. So maybe that show could be retired, or maybe you just run with it, because for a long time, those in the media and those that don't like Trump have pushed this idea that he's not as rich as he says he is. And I'm sure they'll attack, who did I say was Bloomberg Billionaires Index, for putting him on the list. Just ironic that the president chose that day to say that Trump was being crushed by debt, as the former president's net worth soared to $6.4 billion. Yes, billion dollars. Now, did you see, speaking of Biden, we're going to get away from Biden here in a little bit, because I want to talk a little bit more about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because there seems to be some reaction coming here. And I would like to get your opinion. Do you find that off-putting when the president does that so often, about interjecting a story into every scenario, tragic or not? Yesterday, or 2 days ago, White House press secretary Jean-Pierre got flustered by a North Carolina radio host. So the radio host was asking her a question. I'm not sure why she was there. Must be just a campaign. And so the radio host, what is his name? Does not say here. But the host says, when I told a number of people that I was talking to you today, it was interesting, though. They all said, would you please just ask her, does the president have dementia? And so before I move on from that, does he? Oof, I don't think this guy will have to worry about getting too many more interviews coming from the White House. Mark, I can't even believe you're asking me that question. That is an incredibly offensive question to ask. The host, Mark Garrison, said, but people ask it. And then she talked over him. Mark, you're taking us down this rabbit hole. Let me be very clear about this. For the past several years, the president's physician has laid out in a comprehensive way the president's health. This is a president, if you watch him every day, if you really pay attention to his record and what he has done, you will see exactly how focused he has been on the American people, how historic his actions have been. Now, we know they did not have him take a cognitive test. We know that the press does not get to speak to the doctor, the physician, directly, as unlike tradition. And so I'm not even going to, take the premise of your question. I think it's incredibly insulting. And so we can move on to the next question. So Garrison then asked gas prices and grocery prices then. Big topics here in North Carolina. How does Mr. Biden win votes when people don't have as much disposable income? And this is why I bring it up, to tie it in with what I was just saying about always interjecting his story into something. Now, this wasn't the president directly doing this. This was his press secretary. But he understands how difficult it is for Americans who are sitting around their kitchen table every month trying to figure out what they're going to pay for. You have to remember, when the president walked into this administration, there were multiple crises happening. There was COVID. There was the economy. There was this tailspin because of the last administration, because of what Donald Trump left us. Now, you're asking me about gas prices. The president took action on gas prices. Let's not forget Russia's invasion on Ukraine skyrocketed prices of gas. And because the president took action, we see we are all in a different place than we were in gas prices. Eggs, milk, seafood products all the important groceries. Those costs have gone down because of what the president has been able to do. So I just find it, well, that one I guess makes more sense. But, the idea of always interjecting, not what they claim that he did, but his story. I thought there was a point that I think I skipped over it, but, there it is. Look, the president understands. He grew up in a middle-class family, working-class family in Scranton. The idea of always being from a working-class family in Scranton. And also, I don't know, at what point does it not become relatable? At some point where people go, okay, we get it, Joe. You and I aren't exactly the same, but okay. I don't know. I find it weird, but I'd love to hear what you have to say. All right? We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We're going to get away from President Biden. We do have a few things here about Trump. I want to talk a little bit more about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Going to talk about Ronna McDaniel as well. Yes, and I'm going to read some comments when we come back. Also, if you have not heard, I don't know how you wouldn't have heard by now, if you watch this program for any length of time. But we are going 2 hours on Monday, so please mark your calendars. I know I'm bringing up a lot, but if it was on the back end, right? If it was after the normal hours, it would have been fine. You would have just stayed tuned. But I don't want you to forget in the morning to not turn it on because it's not your habit yet. But we are going to go on at 6 o'clock. So I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you are as well. Let's take our next break. We'll be back with Frankly Speaking after this. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I don't know where the month went. And I would have promoted this before. I just can't believe March is over already. Our good friends at the Paint and Post Food Pantry, I want to mention their nutrition workshop. I mentioned this last month as well. It's a workshop that's a 30 to 40 minute lesson, a recipe demonstration with samples, and a free kitchen tool for every participant. Lessons, recipes, and kitchen tools are different every single time. So if you went last month, you want to go again this month. If you're new to it, you want to go today. Yes, it's today already. It's the fourth Wednesday of every month at 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. So this morning, 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. at the United Church of Paint and Post, 201 North Hamilton Street, and of course in Paint and Post. So that's again today, 10:30 to 11:30. I cannot believe I haven't promoted that until now. Where did March go? You may recall the Assemblyman Phil Palmisano and I talking about it a couple interviews ago because we had the pleasure of going to visit and getting a tour. A couple quick comments. I find it rich that Mayor Adams cites safety concerns in that city, meaning that border city, going to visit the border. But New York City apparently doesn't have the same issue. No, it's not a crime scenario. According to Mayor Adams, it's a recidivism issue. That's from the mayor. That's not from me. Also, Ken, to your point, I do believe with the, and just to give you a quick gist of it, because it's a lengthy text here, but do you think the Democrats are ignorant to the rise in crime created by bail reform, closing prisons, defunding and demonizing the police, trying to take law-abiding citizens' guns away and opening the border to unvetted immigrants? Or could this be the Dems laying the groundwork to ease away for the conversion of the country to socialism and then tying in with the federalization of all police? First of all, I just missed it yesterday. We've been getting so many comments, so I'm glad that you reminded me of it this morning. I do believe there's a lot of power moves being made there. I think when it comes, I don't understand if it's not a power move in some way that I can't figure out. I don't understand why else, take for instance New York State, that Hochul and others would not be demanding bail reform. I don't see the upside, because look at how much it hurt her against Lee Zeldin and how it could hurt the congressional races, whatever race that we're talking about. So I'm not sure what the end game is there, and I would love to hear anybody's comments on that. What do you think? Because from a political standpoint, it's just horrible. The votes that you're getting by, I guess, caving to the criminals is not worth the votes that you're losing for people that are generally scared for their safety, or the people that you're losing in the state because they fear for their safety. And it is scary when you think about the rise of crime, and then you have so many attack on your gun rights. So many things to dissect there, Ken. So I appreciate it, and I think it's a good point that you have there. Let's see. Do we have a Oh, this is a good point. And I guess I glanced over it quickly. Thank you to this viewer. Biden inserts himself because he feels a desperate need to connect and befriend regular workaday citizens as to help hide his professional politician status. You're right. And I glanced over that. I guess I shouldn't say I know why he injects himself into every story. I think there's times where it doesn't really work as well as he thinks. I think when there's a tragedy, maybe skip that one occasionally. But yes, I do agree with you that it's to show his status. I rode the Amtrak for 36 years as a politician. It's to not let people realize or try to confuse people to maybe into the point of forgetting that he has been a career politician. So that's a very good point. Well noted, everybody. Such great comments. Okay. I mentioned earlier Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announcing Nicole Shanahan as his VP pick. I'd love to hear your opinion on it. Some were suggesting that maybe he pick a young candidate. Well, I mean, she's young, 38, so that's okay. A Republican or someone with significant amount of cash flow could do wonders for his campaign. Google money and Twitter media, San Francisco resident Dan Stegning said, in summing up what Shanahan would bring to the ticket. Yeah, I don't know if they're saying there that she's a Republican in some way. She has a history of supporting Democrat candidates, so I don't think that's the case. But yeah, an interesting pick. I'm not making any other comment than that. Did you realize this is one point that we brought up a long time ago about RFK Jr., and I wanted to update you on it. Supporters said that they are worried, meaning Kennedy supporters, about the Biden administration refusing to give Kennedy Secret Service protection, something he has asked the government for repeatedly during his campaign. So keep in mind, he's at the numbers now where he could be on, again, I don't believe there's going to be a debate, but on the presidential debate. So he's got that kind of numbers, but Biden administration refuses to give him Secret Service, even though you look at the history, of course, with his father and his uncle. So RFK Jr. has spent a significant amount of his campaign finances to fund a private security detail, according to the Federal Election Commission report. So there's an update for you as well. All right. How are we doing? We're doing okay. When we come back, I'm going to give you an update. Why is everything about updates this morning? I must have been watching too much Unsolved Mysteries recently. Fox News has, I think, a very interesting piece about RFK Jr. And what they're saying is Democrats are in panic mode because of his campaign and with the pick of his VP candidate. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. Oh, wow, we're running late. Stay with us. Boy, are we covering a lot of ground this morning on Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you also for all the comments we've received this morning. Like this from a viewer: the people that voted the same way in New York State actually somehow must believe they are still benefiting from the policies. Yeah, I don't understand it. The votes, voting for the same people that, for instance, put through bail reform and the like. But I'll continue with what the viewer had to say. How anyone in New York can ever vote Democrat is proof brainwashing works. Yeah, probably something we said about how money in politics works as well. Yeah, it's, you figure their failures in Albany are the two biggest issues that people, well, three biggest issues that people look at when you look at the polls, what voters are saying. Public safety, immigration policy, and the economy. So tell me where the track record is from many of those in Albany that would make you think that they're going to do anything different than what we're experiencing now. But back to RFK Jr. I had mentioned on the program, I said I do believe that he is going to take votes away from Biden. And the reason I believe that is because of how the media and the left have been portraying him. It's a Kennedy, and the media normally fawns over Kennedys. In this case, they did not. Then they started screaming, no, he's going to actually hurt Trump. And that always gives me a lot of red flags because they want something to hurt Trump. So why would they say, warning, he's going to hurt Trump? So that also seemed very suspicious to me. Well, according to Fox News, there was a Democrat campaign call that has revealed panic mode over RFK Jr.'s White House bid. Democrats appear to be in panic mode as they scramble to save President Biden's re-election hopes from the threat of independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign. This phone call, which was hosted by the Democrat National Committee, was with members of the press, and it took place immediately after Kennedy announced tech entrepreneur Nicole Shanahan as his VP running mate. All the people, and I guess at that rally where he announced her, They had Representative Robert Garcia, Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis, and Michigan State Senator Mallory McRoy as his guests. But the people on the call all fretted that Kennedy would ruin any chance of Biden being elected. Quote, "We are doing everything in our power to get President Biden and Vice President Harris reelected. It's critical that we take seriously every possible obstacle to that goal. And let me be clear, that's exactly what Robert F. Kennedy is in this election. He's a spoiler." So now they're coming around and saying it. They're no longer hiding it and hoping that he'll go away. So you're going to see a lot more of that in the media, trying to scare people away from Kennedy, whether or not that'll work. Also, she, of course, went on to hit over and over again about vaccines, calling him a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, which is what they do to discredit people very often. That could be on something as simple as, I don't like this law that's making every school buy EV. I don't know if that's going to really help on climate change. Oh, you're a denier? You must be a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. So he's getting that kind of treatment. They said it was important for her to be on the call to share how horrifying his campaign is and what it really means on the ground for Michigan. Okay, so that sentence was very weird. So those people that I just mentioned, Garcia, Davis, and McElroy, were actually on this phone call, not at the rally. My apologies. I just realized that this is one of the people speaking. So I said that. They wrote it kind of strange, but I'll take full blame. So him being in the race means that there's a greater likelihood that Donald Trump will become president again. So now they are not hiding it, for those of you that have wondered. Earlier in the call, Garcia railed against Kennedy as a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, referencing his past skepticism towards vaccines, particularly those that aimed at combating COVID-19. He also accused Shanahan of holding an anti-health agenda, despite a large portion of her introduction as Kennedy's running mate being focused on America's health, especially that of children. Garcia continued to harp on Kennedy's past positions on vaccines, referring to his bid for presidency as, quote, disgusting and shameful, and calling on him to end his horrific campaign. Did you ever imagine a scenario where a Democrat politician would call a Kennedy running for president disgusting and shameful and a horrific campaign? Never. Wow. Earlier this month, the DNC launched an effort. I don't know if you heard about this, and I don't know if we ever brought it up on the show. The DNC launched an effort to silence the threat from third-party candidates. Well, they are good at silencing. They have the media in their back pocket, namely Kennedy, in the form of a team that is expected to actively combat them with legal challenges. Well, the heck you say. Going down that route, huh? Legal challenges and opposition research. I didn't know they like to use the courts so much to go after political threats, or at least what they deem political threats. Interesting. That must be new for the DNC. We got to take another break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Beautiful day here on Market Street. Thanks so much for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I know I'm running late this morning. We've covered so much, but Ronna McDaniel is out already at NBC. The former president weighing in on Truth Social, saying, wow, Ronna McDaniel got fired by fake news NBC. She only lasted 2 days. And this after McDaniel went out of her way to say what they wanted to hear. It leaves her in a very strange place. It's called Never Never Land, and it's not a place you want to be. These radical left lunatics are crazy, and the top people at NBC are weak. They were broken and embarrassed by low ratings, highly overpaid quote-unquote talent. Bring back free and fair press. Make America Great Again 2024. There's an interesting point to all of this that, okay, they hire a Republican to try to reach out and maybe do a better job of maybe getting that important demographic to tune into their station. So they do that. Then their talent, as it were, who are extremely liberal, said, no, we don't like this. And there was a big mutiny, and there was this outrage and really nasty things said about the bosses. And it was very reminiscent of when CNN had that town hall with Trump, and the anchors went on and were almost in tears that they were so angry at the ownership, at the bosses. It's very reminiscent of that. The talent get to the point where they believe that they are bigger than the bosses, and they can be hypercritical. But in this case, they're trying to reach out to a demographic that they're not getting. So now they've probably painted themselves in the worst case scenario, because painting themselves into the corner, because now Republicans say, see, here we go. There's your bias in the NBC newsroom, just like we always knew. Bias. We're never going to watch that again, right? And then on the other side, now Democrats are weary of a outlet that would have ever made that decision in the first place. It's kind of fascinating. I want to talk more about it, but I don't want to run too late. We're going to wrap up on that. Stay with us. Our last break, and then we'll be back with Frankly Speaking. All right, we got to get right back to it. So this is just fascinating because NBC ends up apologizing to their team. I want to personally apologize to our team members who felt we let them down. While this was a collective recommendation by some members of our leadership team, I approved it and take full responsibility for it. This is because they had the audacity to hire a Republican at NBC News. It's unbelievable. According to Semaphore, NBC staffers are bracing for Republican backlash, fielding texts from angry GOP sources. Yeah, because they still have to worry about their sources. Political reporters here didn't take part in the backlash, nor did they get to give input on the hire. But they'll be the ones who have to pick up the pieces with sources who are now dismayed with the organization. Yeah, because if they go to their sources, there's going to be many that say, I'm not going to be on your show, or I'm not going to give you this information after what you did to Ronna McDaniel, or what you're proving with this bias. And that's the point that I was trying to make. Quote, 4 NBC News staffers expressed concern that instead of fixing the problem, hiring and then firing McDaniel had only alienated liberal viewers while confirming Republican fears. 2 Republican aides told Semaphore that they texted their NBC News contacts to express their anger with the decision. And the conflict over McDaniel threatens to reverse some of the gains that top network figures believed that it had made to establish some credibility with members of the Republican Party. NBC lobbied hard behind the scenes for the GOP primary debate, dispatched anchor Lester Holt to meet with the RNC as part of the network's pitch, and it worked, etc., etc. Anyway, what do you think? And I wanted to ask this at the beginning of the program, and it's just been such a fun, hectic show that I didn't get to it. What do you think about this push by Marjorie Taylor Greene to oust Mike Johnson? We're getting very dangerously close to having, and Claudia Tenney actually gave an interview or did an op-ed on this. Representative Claudia Tenney saying we're very close to having, even with the majority, the slim majority that we have, having Speaker Hakeem Jeffries because of this, what some are calling the kamikaze caucus. There's a piece at the Tennessee Sun that's an opinion columnist, Cameron Smith, that says Marjorie Taylor Greene makes a mistake to target Speaker Johnson. U.S. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is the most conservative leader of the House of Representatives, Newt Gingrich, and it goes on to talk about this. Let me put it gently. Kamikaze Republicans like Greene are deceptive show ponies hell-bent on burning President Ronald Reagan's big tent to the ground. And as I mentioned, Claudia Tenney saying we could end up having a Speaker Hakeem Jeffries as the GOP majority narrows. He's got to stay, meaning Mike Johnson. We could end up having a Speaker Hakeem Jeffries in the interim here while we're waiting for special elections. Personally, if you're going to make a commitment to the people that elect you, that you're going to serve for 2 years unless you have a really good reason not to serve, then why would you do that? And aren't we Team Republican? I don't know. There seems to be a lot out there that don't want to be Team Republican, right? More about themselves. Don't forget the nutrition workshop today at the United Church of Painted Post, 201 North Hamilton Street from 10:30 till 11:30 this morning. Have a great day, everyone, and we will be back. Thank you for all the comments. We'll be back tomorrow morning starting at 7 with Frankly Speaking, only on Big Fox. We'll see you then.